All right, so we're going to talk about what does healing look like for the part of us that is hidden. And we've been going through the Sermon on the Mount, and we've gotten to the point where Jesus talks about what does it look like to be fully surrendered to our higher power? What are the traits of a person that has fully surrendered? In other words, what does real recovery look like? Then he goes on to start doing a teaching on the new heart that a person has when they fully surrender to God. There is a transformation of their heart. And so he goes through this series of teachings where he says, you've heard it said blank, but I say to you blank. And he's really drawing from the Ten Commandments. And the very first area he talks about is what we're going to look at today, which is anger. And this is what he says. He says, you've heard it said that you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry, and that's a key word right there that we're going to unpack. What exactly was the word that he used in the original language that has been translated angry? I tell you, anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raha, we're going to unpack what that word means, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. So this was a shocking teaching that Jesus did, where he takes the ethic that most of the people subscribe to, which is you shall not murder, and he says, it's not just what you do with your hands. It's what's happening inside your heart that I look at. And that's what matters. Now, he uses the word anger, and let's unpack that word for a moment. What that word anger literally means in the Greek, the original language that Jesus used when he taught this sermon, it means slow burn. What it's referring to is not some kind of immediate gut reaction of anger where you just snap. What he's talking about is a condition of your heart where there has been this buildup over time of bitterness. One word we use for this is resentment. And when we do this, he says two words that show that we've got this slow burn. Two words, raha. And what that word means, it literally means you are a nobody. You are nothing to me. You are less than. You are inferior to me. I look down upon you. It is the idea of dehumanization or objectification. I'm superior to you. You are meaningless to me. You are nothing. You are nobody. You're not even worth my time and effort. A lot of times when we avoid our partners, when we stonewall, when we go into avoidance, when we neglect them, when we withdraw from them, when we give them a silent treatment, we are treating them as if they are raha. You are less than. You are not worth my time. I'm going to make you pay for what you did to me. There is bitterness. There is this slow burn that is spilling over in our heart. The second word he uses is fool. The original word is moros in the Greek, where we get the word moron. And this just simply means you're a fool, you're inferior, you're stupid, you're less than. So the idea around this bitterness that has a slow burn in our heart, that Jesus says, when you fully surrender to God, you don't have bitterness anymore. We're not talking about murder with your hands. We're talking about murder in your heart. And that we are capable of all kinds of evil if in our heart there is this slow burn of resentment and bitterness. We begin to see the other person as the enemy. We begin to see them as less than. In a very real way, we begin to dehumanize them. Now, if you take the fact that many of us who are in recovery spent years viewing pornography and participating in objectifying people, we have been conditioned to already dehumanize humans. Just from that constant exposure and consumption, we already have this conditioned response to see other humans as objects. So we are even more prone to this dehumanization, to this resentment, to this they are less than, they are inferior, they are objects, they are not people. And the reason that Jesus finds this to be not compatible with the new heart that we experience when we fully surrender to God is because of this definition of what true love really is. Love is the proactive valuing of someone else's needs above my own. So if we take a scale, we're saying my needs are not as important as your needs. I put priority over your needs above mine. That is agape love. That is true love. The reason that bitterness is so problematic and heinous and sinful is because it violates true love. When we have a new heart that is surrendered to our higher power, we take on this new ethic and this new heart of love, especially with our partners. And we want to put their needs above ours. Bitterness is saying, I'm better than you, and my needs are more important than yours. My needs for justice and revenge and vindication are more important than your needs for patience, love, grace, and forgiveness. And now we have violated the law of love. Now, what I want to do is take this teaching of Jesus and overlay it with another verse that talks about bitterness a little bit more. And that is found in Hebrews 12. And in Hebrews 12, it says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone. So we want to live peaceful lives. And we're going to talk about what does that look like? Because our program promises peace. It promises serenity. But we're not going to have the promises of the program if we still have bitterness in our heart. The author of Hebrews goes on to say, see to it that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to cause trouble and dishonor many. See that no one is godless or sexually immoral like Esau. Now, Esau is a case study that we're going to look at, who for a single meal sold his blessing as the oldest son. So notice that, first of all, it says that we need to make every effort to live lives of peace with everyone. And what that looks like graphically is something like this. We want to have peace with God. We want to have the peace of God inside of ourselves. And then from that peace flows peace with others. So those are the three movements of peace. First, we need to make peace with God. And by the way, that's steps 1 through 5. If you do a true, genuine, all in, 100% step 1 through 5, what you are doing is making peace with God. What you experience when you do that and you go into steps 6 and 7, working on your defects, is that now you are having the peace of God in your heart. So it begins with making peace with God. That's the progression of the steps. And that gives us peace of God that resides and dwells in our heart. And when we flow through step 8 and 9, now that peace with God, that peace of God that's in our hearts, now flows to peace with others. And we're able to forgive. We're able to let go of resentments. We're able to make amends. And then steps 10 through 12 is how to maintain this movement of peace in our lives, how to maintain peace with God, the peace of God, and peace with others. So when Hebrews says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone. Well, who's everyone? God, self, and others. And it gives us this case study of a man who did not have peace, a man who, if he was to take the SDI, the sexual addiction inventory today, he would probably score as a sex addict, like many of us. His name was Esau. And let's look at his case study. So this is found in Genesis chapter 25, if you want to look at it on your own this week. But this is a case study of a man who does not have peace with God. He does not have the peace of God in his heart, and he doesn't have peace with others. He's not a person of peace. Now, Esau is a hard man, the story says. He's a hunter. He's a warrior. He's a man's man. He's like some of you. He is rough. He is tough. He has a brother who's the total opposite of him. Okay? His brother is named Jacob. So if we could just take some creative license here. When we see Esau, he probably drives a truck. It's probably a 4x4. It's probably lifted up too. Jacob drives a Prius. And if you drive a Prius, I'm not taking jabs at you. We're just having some fun here. Esau has a tattoo. Jacob probably wears Crocs. Esau is a hunter and a fisher, and he likes to kill wild game and eat it. And his brother is a vegetarian. And the parents play favorites. So the dad really likes Esau, and the mom loves Jacob. So Jacob is a mama's boy. And what we see is Esau has very little regard for God. He's called godless. He's a very independent man, like many of us. He's a very self-sufficient man, like many of us. He's a very tough man. And one day he comes home and he's hungry. He's been outside all day. He's famished. He's been hunting. Maybe he didn't have much success that day, and he doesn't have anything that he could cook and eat. His brother's been home all day making soup. Okay? So he walks in, and his brother says, "What have you been doing today?" He says, "Well, I've been trying to kill animals. What have you been doing?" "Well, I've been baking." And so these are two very different brothers. And what happens in the story is that Jacob has been home all day with his mom, and he's been making this delicious bowl of soup. Esau comes home. He's hungry. He smells the soup. He looks at Jacob and he says, "I would really like some of that soup." And Jacob says, "Well, you know what? You're the firstborn, so you have the birthright. You have all the family blessing as the firstborn in our culture. I'll make a deal with you. Let's trade. If you'll give me your birthright and your family blessing, then I'll give you a big bowl of soup." And in that moment, Esau, driven just by his appetite, just by pleasure, momentary pleasure, he says, "Let's shake hands. I'll take the deal." And Esau trades his blessing, his future, his legacy, for a bowl of soup. So we may laugh at Esau, but all of us in recovery on this addict can probably relate, because we all had a bowl of soup. Why would a man trade his future for some momentary pleasure, like a bowl of soup? Well, I've seen many of us, including myself, trade our blessing for even less than that. We've all got our own bowl of soup. That one thing that in a moment we made the decision that damaged and affected our entire future, our entire family, and our entire legacy. We traded our future for a moment of pleasure, for just a little bit of satisfaction. We gave up so much for a dopamine hit that we felt for just a moment in our brain, until we came back to our normal self and we realized what we had just sacrificed. It says that Esau is godless. There is no indication in any of his life that he had any kind of relationship with a higher power. We don't see him ever pray. We don't see him ever worship. We don't see him ever, frankly, do much of anything with God or for God or to God. He was just callous. He was just indifferent. He was distracted. He was busy. He didn't have time for spiritual things. In addition, not only that, it says that he was sexually immoral. It says that he had multiple wives, not just one. And this was not God's plan. He's what we would call a polygamist. So let me ask you, when it comes to your own life right now, where you're at in recovery, are you like Esau still? I know we were at one time in our active addiction, but are you still primarily motivated by pleasure? What drives you? For Esau, it was sex and it was violence and it was control. And as we see, it was food. And he doesn't really get beyond the desires of his body to anything to deal with his spirituality. So let me ask you a question. Did Esau want God's blessing? Yes, the story says that he really did. He got down on his knees and he said, God, please give me my blessing back. Please take care of me. Please take care of my family. Please take care of my kids. I want you to do good for us. And God said, no, I won't do it. And here's why God said no. Esau, he wanted the blessings of God, but he didn't want God. And I have never met anyone in our program that doesn't want God's blessings. I mean, we're all desperate in recovery, aren't we? God, please heal my partner. God, please heal our relationship. Please don't let me lose any more than I've already lost. Please restore my relationship with my children or with my grandchildren. Please don't let my employer find out. Please don't let me lose this job. We want all these blessings, but I have met a lot of men in our program who don't want God. They want the benefits of the program, but they don't want the spiritual practices of the 12 steps. Esau doesn't want God. He only wants God's favor and blessings. Is that you? Whether you're watching this live or you're watching this on YouTube, we need to understand that we can't control our higher power. We don't tell God what to do. He has all authority. He tells us what to do. We are used to manipulating and controlling everything in our life, or at least trying to. Steps 1 through 3 is about surrender. It's about letting go and letting God. It's about letting Him have authority in your life. It's about trusting your life and your will to His care. So the truth is, if you don't want God, why would you expect God to do anything for you? Because God's request is this: if you give me your life, then I will give you my blessings. Then I will give you the promises of the program. But we say, no, I want to stay in control. Let me continue to drive the bus of my life. You just get on the back seat and bless me. And that's what Esau wanted. And God said, no. I don't want to surrender to you, God. I just want you to help me. And then I want you to go on your way and let me continue to run my life. So do you want something from God or do you want God? Now, it goes on to say, notice this progression here. This is really important. It goes from bitterness to godlessness to sexual immorality. And if we think about our own sexual integrity issues, I'm willing to bet that you see this same progression. That there was a root of bitterness in our heart before we ever acted out. And that root of bitterness led to godlessness, and that godlessness led to sexual immorality. So the end of this sequence is sexual immorality. Question: is sexual immorality a problem today? Yeah. Almost everyone who hears this message today is going to struggle in some way with sexual immorality of some kind. Maybe it's pornography, maybe it's adultery, maybe it's lust and objectification, maybe it's an addiction, maybe you've been betrayed by someone who had these behaviors, whatever the case may be. But sexual immorality is a massive problem today, and with technology, it's only becoming worse. So the question is this: what is the sequence of events that leads to sexual immorality? This verse says that it starts with the root of bitterness. The root is bitterness. The fruit is sexual immorality. And the problem that many of us have in recovery is we're trying to prune all the sexual immorality out of our lives and restore our sexual integrity, but we do nothing about the bitterness that's in our hearts. And if you know anything about when you cut off the fruit, but you don't get rid of the root, it just comes back over time. And it comes back usually stronger. The problem with the root of bitterness is that you don't see it right away. There could be this massive root of bitterness in your soul, but it hasn't come to the light yet. It's still underground. And we can't see a thing, but the fact is, our higher power can see it. The Bible says that we look on the outward, but God looks at the heart. So you may not see the root of bitterness that's in your heart right now because it's so deep, but God sees it, and it will eventually come to the surface. Now, there are two main groups of people that you're going to experience bitterness with. There's two main people. The first, believe it or not, the most likely person that you might be bitter against is your spouse. And there's a few reasons for this. Let's look at the reasons. Number one, it's the only relationship that you have that's a covenant. There's no other relationship like it. It's unlike any other relationship. You are supposed to be one flesh, because God values marriage above all other human relationships. And our enemy hates marriage because it reflects the love of God. And so he's going to attack marriage, and he's going to try to destroy it. That's why when you look at Adam and Eve, the serpent didn't even show up until they were married. When Adam was a single guy, we don't see the enemy. It's not till they get married that the enemy shows up and tries to destroy what they have. So the reasons that you could be most likely bitter to your spouse is because, number one, you have higher expectations of them than any other person. Number two, you're more vulnerable to them typically than you are to any other human. So they have the capacity to hurt you deeper than other people. Number three, you spend more time with them. So there's just simply more opportunity for them to fail you or to irritate you or to not meet your expectations. Number four, the enemy wants to do everything he can to destroy your marriage. He hates it. Number five, we care more about what our spouse thinks and says and does than any other human. A stranger can do something to you that's pretty darn damaging, but 20 years later, you're not really thinking about it. But your spouse can do something that seems relatively minor, and it destroys you because you care about them. Now, the second person that we're most likely to have bitterness towards is actually our higher power. Some of you have bitterness against God because you're blaming him for what someone else did to you. And you're just saying, God, if you just would have shown up, you could have prevented this. If you really are God, you could have intervened and you could have stopped this. If you just would have changed the course of my life, I wouldn't be in the position that I am right now. So our spouse didn't meet our expectations, and God didn't meet our expectations, and expectations are simply future resentments. And so we've got this bitterness because God wasn't the God that we feel like he should have been. And I hear this all the time in our program. I struggle with the concept of a higher power because I have so much bitterness towards him. And that's legitimate. Now, it goes on to say that the root of bitterness leads to godlessness. Well, what do we mean by godlessness? Godlessness is this: I don't want to practice any spiritual principles. I'm not even sure if I believe in God. I'm not going to read any kind of literature, Bible or sacred literature. I don't want to pray because I don't want to hear what he has to say. I don't even think he's even listening anyway. I don't want to be under his authority. I'm going to leave him out for most of my life unless it's really desperate. Then I might give him a call and see if he'll help me out. I'm not going to pray to him. I'm not going to talk to him. I don't really want anything to do with him because deep down in my heart, though I may be conscious or unconscious of it, I've got a lot of bitterness towards him. My life has been hard. He didn't really help. I've been through some terrible things. I feel like I've earned the right to be a little godless right now, to have some compromises in my life. I feel like I'm justified in what I'm doing. I feel like I'm entitled to this. This person failed me and God failed me. And so I'm a victim. And so as a victim, I'm entitled to a little bit of pleasure in my life, even if this God says that he doesn't approve. So it's almost the reverse of what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches that we've sinned against God and we need to be reconciled to him. But in our bitterness, we reverse that and we say, God has sinned against me and he needs to make up for it. So bitterness leads to godlessness. When we have bitterness in our heart, we tend to leave God out of our lives. We give him the stiff arm. What does that do? That leads to sexual immorality, just like Esau. He was a man who was unfaithful to God, and he ended up being unfaithful to his wife, and he had multiple wives. So bitterness is not just when someone offends you or they don't meet your expectations and you decide, I'm not going to forgive you. There's another kind of bitterness. There's the half brother of Jesus, whose name is James. And he writes in the book of the Bible, and he has this phrase in that book. He says that there is such a thing as bitter envy. Do you know what bitter envy is? It's this. I wish I had your life. I wish I looked like you. I wish I made as much money as you. I wish my spouse looked like her or him. I look at all these things that that spouse does for their partner, and I wish my spouse would do that for me. Sometimes when we go into recovery meetings, especially co-ed meetings and couple meetings, we can begin to look at some of the other couples, and if we're not careful of guarding our heart, we may have bitter envy because we see couples that seem to be doing well, or she's further along, or he's further along, or they're getting to do this, or they're getting to do that, or they're doing the homework, or they're showing up, or they're in a better place. And why can't my partner be like them? And in an unwilling way, in an unconscious way, we can become bitterly envious of someone in our community because our partner is not bringing us the experience that that partner is bringing to their spouse. Once you start comparing your spouse to someone else, you can develop a root of bitterness. You can have bitter envy. Comparison is the thief of joy. And that can culminate into sexual immorality. And in that moment, we could lose our blessing and we could lose everything. So what we're talking about is if we want to have peace with God and the peace of God so that we can have peace with others, we are going to have to dig up the root of bitterness. We have to be honest as we do step 1 through 5 and completely surrender our lives to our higher power and completely confess everything we've done, 100% full disclosure to God, self, and one other human being, including our partner, so that we can have peace with God. And then as we do step 6 and 7 and work on our character defects, we begin to have the peace of God dwelling in our hearts. And then as we do step 8 through 9, the peace of God begins to flow and we have peace with others. We can let go of bitterness and resentment. We can extend the same forgiveness that we've received. We can now extend that to others. And we can have peace in all of our relationships. That's what the 12 steps are all about.